Welcome to Arizona Barrio Stories. This is Irma coming to you from 147 East Adams. If you haven't been down here, come and visit us. We have art, we have cositas for sale in the tiendita. Come and visit us. We love meeting people. When you support them, you support us. Before we get started today, we have a quick message from attorney Francisco Gutierrez.
This segment brought to you by Gutierrez Law Firm.
Hola mi gente, I'm attorney Francisco Gutierrez and a proud sponsor of Arizona Barrio Stories. I grew up in the Anat Barrio and I've been practicing law now since 1984. Experience really does matter. If you've been injured by someone, call me, let's talk.
Welcome back. I love history. Anything to do with history, I find it interesting because a lot of times we aren't taught certain things in school, and it's not till we're an adult that we find out things. That is kind of a passion that I have, and today I have a special guest, and I kind of have a sneaky suspicion it's his passion too. Please introduce yourself.
So I am Marshall Shore. I am the hip historian. And my passion is indeed looking at Arizona and finding those stories we're not talking about. I mean, all those amazing people, places, and events that are part of how we got to where we are, but we have just forgotten about them.
Welcome, Marshall.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Tell me about little Marshall growing up. Tell me a little bit of, just in a nutshell, give me your background.
I grew up in a small town in Indiana, a small farm town, about 25 people. My goal was to get out. And so I thought education, that's the way to do it. So I basically went off to college, became a librarian, and so from there I moved to New York City. As a librarian, working at Brooklyn Public, New York Public, and getting to be exposed to so many different cultures and art, food, you name it. It's like at 3 a.m., it's like I could find almost darn near anything. And got tired of getting pushed from neighborhood to neighborhood. And so it was like, well, either buy something or go for an adventure. And pretty much that's how I landed here in Phoenix 26 years ago.
I heard a rumor that you were the librarian at Herman Park Library.
I was indeed.
Tell me about that.
So, I mean, you know, it was so funny because they're like, oh, you're going to work in a bad neighborhood. And I get to this bad neighborhood. They're like, well, it's in the middle of 2 housing projects. I'm like, well, wait a minute. All I can see are these cute little bungalows. Where are the housing projects? And it was such an amazing community that's where I started learning about Arizona, was through the residents as they would talk about what happened. Why was there this church in the middle of a field? And just talking to the residents. And so that was my introduction to Arizona through just these stories that most people didn't know about. And I never stopped doing that, to the point where now that's all I do is go out and seek out stories and retell them and add more to them, research, and just find more stuff that makes Arizona even cooler.
I call that the untold story.
Completely. And there's so many untold stories.
Now, approximately what years were you there at Herman Park?
So I got there 2000, and I was there probably 2006, 2007. So towards the end, I was there, and also Ocotillo.
Wow, on Southern.
Yeah, down
Central,
on Southern. So I was kind of splitting my time between both of those branches. And the beauty of that was they were very different communities, but the architecture, I mean, that 1950s building that Harmon was in.
Do you remember the old building?
Oh yeah, that's the building I was in.
Okay.
So the new fancy Richard and Bauer, I'm like, I remember the 1950s version. I was there when Will Bruder came in and did a pro bono paint scheme. So it went from being kind of this brick building to being this very colorful with a tile mural on the back wall and so much of the community. One of the beautiful things about that library was when I got here, everyone said, well, you know, in the summer, everything dies. So I'm in this library, and in the back, there's this lush green garden in the middle of summer. And I'm like, well, and then I get to work early one day, and I notice some women out there working in the garden, and we started talking. They were retired Japanese flower garden staff. So they had been tending all those gardens, retired, and they were still doing their passion, but now at the library. So I just kept getting layer and layer upon layer of different stories.
Awesome. So would it be assumptions, but is that when it sparked, or you got bit by the bug of research and hip historian?
Well, I mean, as a librarian, it was kind of like, I always loved the research side of it. Mm-hmm. And really the bug that bit me was I moved from New York, and at first I did what? I moved to Phoenix 26 years ago for Phoenix. But then it was those stories. As you said, those untold stories, that's what the bug was. About you'd find this a story, and then it's like, well, wait a minute, why aren't we talking about that? And it's, and then there's this story. And so it just kept snowballing to the point where I walked away from libraries to just focus on Arizona history and those untold stories.
And we're talking of days when there was card catalog, right? Pre-computer, pre-Google or
right.
internet.
Yeah.
Do you recall maybe the type of books that kids in that community would ask you about? Or
so because of the library being right in the middle next to Marcus Deniza, we saw, when Lowell let out of school, we were full of kids. We didn't see many adults. And I was like, well, how do we change that? And one of the staff was like, there's these things called photonovellas. And so I reached out to library staff. I said, I want a wall of photonovellas. And so that's what we did. And so you would have parents come in, and they were checking out stacks of those photonovellas. And while they were looking at those, their kids were off looking at other books. And so it did exactly what I wanted to do, because it got the adults in as well, not just the kids. And the fun thing was, if you flip them over, people had developed their own little mark, so they know they had read that one. So it's like they knew not to get that one, so they would just sit there and flip to the back page and go, okay, I read that one, not this one, yes, no, yes, no. And so, but to see kids checking out a stack of books as well as the adults checking out a stack of reading material. It's like, that's when I knew I was okay, I'm in the right place. Exactly.
You hooked them.
Right. And so that way their kids saw their parents reading, they were reading, so everybody was just out there learning and enjoying print and all those stories.
Tell me what you do today, and why do they call you the hip historian? Tell me how that arrived.
So hip historian actually came out of Centennial back in 2012. And they did events all across the state, including at the state capitol on February 14th. And so they had a stage, and they were trying to find folks to put on stage to talk about history. And so I got a call, and they said, hey, do you want 15 minutes? I was like, I would love 15 minutes to talk about some Arizona history. So we talked about an event called Mask of the Yellow Moon.
Oh, Phoenix Union.
Phoenix Union. From 1926 to 1955, it had thousands of high school and college students evolving and growing up in this. And so we talked about that. I was actually able to find 3 dresses from the late 30s that we had models wandering around the stage wearing, as we talked about that Mask of the Yellow Moon. And so there was another historian on the stage as well at a different time, Marshall Trimble. Oh. And because we have the same first name, a lot of people just see the first name and assume they know who it is. And so at that point, the head of tourism was trying to figure out how to describe me as I'm not Marshall Trimble. And she was like, oh, he's the hip historian. And I read that, and I was like, Karen, that's better than any tagline I've come up with, so I'm stealing it. Thank you. And so from that date forward, I have been the hip historian, and really trying to bring Arizona's history to why should we care now? And so many stories.
Before we close out, could you give us a story about, as you've done your research, has there been a challenge or a surprise that you have found as you've done
always surprises. I mean, that's part of the fun of it, is that sense of discovery. But you know, you never know where the next story is coming from. And at one point, I was I was on the board of the Pioneer Cemetery down the street.
Kim Casper.
And Kim Casper, exactly. And so one of the volunteers that we were working with came up and said, you know, I've been doing a project over in Greenwood. You should check out the story of Nikolai Duralin. And I'm like, Nikolai Duralin? Okay. So I started researching. So Nikolai's story is born in Russia, moved to Chicago, got himself a fairly cushy job, and 2 wives, 1 divorce, and tuberculosis. So like so many early 1900s, he moves to Arizona for his health. It doesn't go well. In a few months, he passes away. As they're ready for burial, they discover that Nikolai was born a woman. Wow. And so in 1906, he's buried in Greenwood Cemetery with no headstone. And so just before COVID hit, we were able to raise funds and got him a headstone.
Awesome.
And so working with like Transspectrum, a local trans group here, working with Louise Lawrence Digital Archive out of San Francisco to make sure that it personified who he was. And so that's, I mean, part of what I do. I mean, just trying to figure out, well, how do we also tag this history so others can discover it and keep on learning more?
Interesting story. I am amazed at the stories that we find on our end.
Oh, that's what I love about bio stories. Like, I'm like, but you know, but then there's always, it's like, I've got a friend who was like, oh, you know, by the way, can I borrow your film projector? And I'm like, sure. He's like, well, this is my grandparents getting married at Sacred Heart. And I'm, so we actually did a test, and I was watching that in my living room going, oh my gosh, this is so cool.
See, and those are the things we look for.
Oh,
that we reach out to our community looking for slides, for old photographs, for film projector type of home movies.
Yeah. And so he says he has a whole slew of them. So at some point we're going to wind up doing just like a film event and just showing these films. So
I want to thank you. I hope you continue doing what you're doing.
You. I mean, I love what you do. I love Barrio Stories and all the history that you're bringing forward, and also the community involvement. It's not you're just putting stuff out there, but then people are like, oh, when I was there, it's like, oh, you know, that was my mom that did that.
My mom was a graduate from Phoenix Union in 1940.
Oh, so she would have been.
She talks about the yellow mask of the yellow moon.
When are we having coffee?
Anyway. I want to thank you for coming on our show today.
Thank you.
And don't be afraid to come back and visit.
Well, not. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Well, I'm reaching out to you now. Do you have those old photo albums or maybe some slides? Maybe you don't know what to do with them. Maybe, just maybe, your parents or your grandparents left something behind. Reach out to us. We will help you scan those photos, and maybe somebody out there has an old film projector that we can borrow. This is Irma from Arizona Barrio Stories, and Marshall. He was at Harmon Park and Ocotillo Library. Maybe you remember him. Reach out to us, say hi. This is Irma signing off.
I also want to throw in my website.
Oh, yes.
hiphistorian.com.
We'll put that on our tape.
Okay, perfect.
This is Irma, and I will see you soon.